If you're trying to raise money this year, are you doing it the same old, same old? Or are you being thoughtful and intentional about what works in 2026?
This is CampHacker. Come find our show notes and our blog for camp directors and leaders at camphacker.tv.
Running camp comes with enough moving parts. Ultra Camp keeps registration, payments, and communication in one place so you can spend less time juggling systems and more time building an incredible camp experience. Learn more at ultracampmanagement.com/camphacker.
If you're still making camp schedules and spreadsheets, you know how draining it is and how often mistakes slip in. Enter Camptivities. It's made by camp people for camp people to save time, cut errors, and make camp run smoother. Be the change your camp needs. Explore smarter scheduling today at camptivities.com.
Hello, Camp Myrex, and welcome to the CampHacker podcast, even though it sounds like it's the Fundraising at Camp podcast. This one is brought to you by Ultra Camp, Camptivities, and the Resilient Blueprint Operating System Diagnostic. I'm Travis Allison. I'm a summer camp consultant specializing in helping camps to reclaim their staff time, build resilience, and reignite their purpose. Joe, do you mind doing your introduction?
My name is Joe Richards. I am the executive director at Pierce Williams Summer Camp and Retreat Facility, which is part of the United Church of Canada's Summer Camp and Retreats program. And we are located in Fingal, Ontario, about halfway between Detroit and Toronto. Glad to be back on CampHacker.
That's right, co-founder of CampHacker, Joe Richards. I'm glad you're back, Joe. Heather, tell us about yourself.
Hi, my name's Heather Withrow. I'm the president at Jumonville down in Western Pennsylvania, and I'm excited to be back on CampHacker.
And we're grateful to have you. It's nice to have another conversation about smart stuff on CampHacker with you, Heather, and great to have Joe back in his co-hosting chair. We are going to revise. That's not the right word. We're going to bring everybody back together from the Fundraising at Camp podcast that the three of us ran and had to put aside because of other demands on our time. But so much time has passed, but even more stuff has changed since we last did this show. So I wanted to ask Heather and Joe to be here to help me out with an update on what works in fundraising in 2026. So I'm grateful to have the two of you here. For those of you listening or watching us on YouTube, if you have a chance, we'd be grateful if you'd rate us or give us a bit of feedback on whatever podcast app you're using or by using the comment section in YouTube. That helps us figure out what we do more of. And if you have questions for Heather and Joe, put them there. They won't answer them today, but we will try to get some answers as we go. So thank you both for being here. Joe, what do you know about fundraising the first week of December 25 that you didn't know 3 years ago?
I know that as much as things change, a lot of it stays. The basics of good fundraising stay the same. I also know that since I did that podcast, we hired a part-time funding person here at Pierce Williams, and I know that makes it a lot easier to have someone who focuses on that, but also it can be a challenge about who's best to where your knowledge lies. So if I'm the one with all the knowledge, should I be the one fundraising? Is that the best use of my time compared to thinking about finances and thinking about other things? And so that's part of what I know.
Okay. Where did you folks land on how much you do versus your development person?
Well, it's a big thought that I'm having right now. Is this idea that you have a half-time sort of person, and as I think about the next 10 years of our existence as a facility, and let's say in 10 years I'm going to retire, would it make more sense for me to find someone, so instead of a half-time funding person, that you actually have you take other jobs off of an ED's plate so they can do that work.
Right.
And that's sort of where I've landed in my mind. All of it is up in the air. And any Pierce Williams staff listening to this podcast, none of this I'm not making policy on this podcast. I'm just speaking out loud about this idea that, can you raise more funds? if our goal is to set up an endowment over the next 10 years that would allow Pierce Williams to operate off the interest from said endowment, who's the best person to do that? And who's going to likely to be around the longest, right? To see that work through. I think that's sort of where I've landed in my mind. I'm taking it slow, thinking about it as I think about our staff team and finances and all of those things over this December period.
Right on. Right on. Heather, what have you learned about fundraising in the last 3 years?
Well, I've taken sort of the opposite step of Joe, not for the first time in my life. And I promoted my very capable staff from within to do more of the day-to-day stuff so that I can do more of the fundraising, which is just a different lens to the same problem. The thing I've really focused on since the podcast ended was permission-based fundraising, making sure that I'm really clear with my donors about coming and doing an ask, or I'm coming to talk to you and want to talk to you about this new thing. And eventually I'd like to ask, is that okay with you? I found that to be very useful in just getting people thinking about it. And if they say yes, you're already more than halfway there. And in this bespoke world that we live in now, really customizing my asks to the donor. And I've always done that to some extent, but that's really gone up on in my list of tools, is to really cater the ask to the donor.
By that, you mean putting stuff in front of them that they like to sponsor or that they like to donate? Does it, a particular aspect of camp? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, paying attention to all the conversations you have with them, pay attention to where they donate, pay attention to where their tie is to camp. For example, were they kitchen staff? Did they work maintenance? Did they, were they a counselor and their mother was a counselor and their grandmother was a counselor? All of that sort of thing to say, okay, and in some cases, here's a problem that someone has brought to me. For example, during our family weeks, I have one donor who has for years said, we need the snack shop open late at night so that the young adults and older teens have someplace to hang out. Well, that causes friction, as you might imagine, with the snack shop staff who don't want to be up until 11, 12. So I just put a proposal in front of him to fund the building and furnishing of a lounge that's specifically for young adults, sort of an arcade hangout mixed spot. And he's going to do it. And it was a $650,000 ask.
Oof. Well done. That's great. Yeah, that's really awesome. So, picking up on a couple of themes, I'm going to assume that most people listening to this weren't fundraising at camp listeners or haven't listened to every episode in the last few months. But there's a few things that come up that were consistent themes. One in particular is having really good notes about your donors. And I think that focus on the things that motivate them is also a theme that came up a ton. I talked often on that show about a program we're beginning, which has now become really successful at the camp that Beth and I used to direct, which is a monthly giving campaign. And we have really focused that on staff alumni because we want that fund to be operations and not something that they can see. It's not campership, which is pretty easy to raise for. And staff know what it's like to work with a couple $100 program budget in the summer or a few $1,000, summer budget on different programs. And that has worked out really well. It's not just staff in that group, but focusing on that with people that have a deep feeling for how camp runs has meant that we can use that group to prop up operations and the rest of the donors for other projects as well.
Well, and that's really great for building a culture of philanthropy among your alumni, that as they age and are able to give bigger gifts, they already have that camp front of mind and a pattern of giving to them. That's wonderful. Travis, congratulations.
Yeah, and slowly can build that into this idea of asking for bequests as well. So as that donor base is, if they're monthly givers especially, you can lead them into this idea of, you can also give, a percentage of your estate in your will, which might not help look like it's much today, but in the future, it will help camp continue And those are the people you want to get early so that it's just sort of put in and always ask for a percentage, not for an amount.
Right.
10% of an estate is better than a $10,000 donation. So,
Yep.
yeah.
It's often those people won't even know what their estate will be worth at that point. Anyway, so you're right, a percentage.
Many of us have no idea what our estate will be worth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. One thing I would say to that too is that a lot of the stuff I have read says that something like an endowment, getting commitments for end of life bequeaths, getting those commitments, doesn't matter how far out in the future you think that money's going to come, just having a number available, roughly this much or this many people who've put us in, is the social proof that can drive more donors and allow you to tell the story of putting us in your will.
It's also true that if you have a big request, you will become immortal.
Oh yeah, totally.
Never not.
We will never stop talking about you.
It's this idea that when you have monthly givers, especially you can use those things the more monthly givers you have, the more monthly givers you're likely to gain. And
Sure.
especially the way you talk about it. So if I have this talk that I give about, I want 100 people who are foundational to Pierce Williams. So just giving $85 a month, which adds up to somewhere just around $1,000 a year. And if that's your base, is that you had $100,000 givers every year, that's a foundation. That's exactly what it is. And if you can build those, you're going to have some attrition and you're going to have some additions, but that allows you to sort of start to plan more how those funds are used, right? We can give more to scholarships. We can give more to capital improvements, right? Versus waiting for people to give $1,000, because giving $1,000 in one go to many people feels like it's not possible. Giving $85 a month every month and just having it come into your bank account doesn't, now I understand there are people listening to this podcast who are going to be like, I live paycheck to paycheck. I can't do that. I understand. I'm not asking you to, but there are many people who can. And Heather and I both know, and Travis, maybe you do know, there's a whole generation of people older than us that $1,000 a month they wouldn't notice, based on their investments, based on their other value things. And because in doing capital campaigns, I've had many financial advisors say, "Oh, I have 20 clients who could give you, $25,000, and it wouldn't even hurt their future at all."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, then ask them. He's like, well, I can't. I was like, well, let's work on that.
But I think that you raise an interesting point in there, Joe, that we, as the people that are doing the asking, have to get out of our own way. Like, I can't ask for somebody because I can't afford to do this, is a real psychological boundary, or not even boundary. Like, it's just a real hurdle that people have to get over, is that being a full-time nonprofit person means that I can't give at the same rate. It doesn't mean I can't ask for stuff that I can't afford.
Yeah. Every gift is significant. Some gifts are substantial, but every gift is significant. And as long as you can look a donor in the eye and say, I support this, I give as well. And if it's the type of donor who's like, well, does your board support? And that's where I'm like, any board member who's like, I can't give. I'm like, just donate $5. That's all I need. I just need $5. Because then I can say to someone who's going to give me $450,000, yes, every board member is bought in on this. They all are donors to camp, and they rarely, if ever, ask how much everybody's giving, because that's privileged information anyway.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been asked that. I've been asked a lot if all the board members give and if I give, but I've never been asked the amount.
Heather, is there stuff that you have stopped doing in the last 3 years or stuff that stopped working?
There's stuff I've tried to stop doing.
Okay.
I made no
Tell us about
secret
that.
about the fact that I hate events.
Yes.
a fundraising tool, if you will.
Yeah.
Um, so we still do them. Church people love events. I don't know why,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I've stopped doing, aside from capital campaigns, I've stopped making everything a campaign. So at one point in my career, I would say we're doing a major gifts campaign. We're doing our annual fund, which is also a campaign. We're doing a
Sure.
campaign for more monthly donors. And it sort of goes back to that personalized fundraising thing
Right.
of saying, okay, I'm going to write you a proposal, Travis, to fund this thing. And I'm going to give it to you in a week. And then in 2 weeks, I'd like to come and talk to you about it.
Mhm.
And I actually had that happen last year with a donor I've been working with for a while. And when I showed up at the couple's house, their financial advisor and their attorney were there. And that's when I
Right.
knew
It's a
it
good
was going to
sign.
be a good day.
Yeah.
So, but giving lots of information on the front end and not hiding the ask
Right.
and saying, I'm not good at hiding anything, but putting it out there that this is what we're asking for. This is what we're going to do with the money. I've stopped asking for the project amount in the case of a major. We're doing a lot of naming gifts right now.
Sure.
And in the case of those, I've stopped asking for what the building needs and start
Yeah.
asking for 50%
Oh.
right off the top to go to operations. And
Right.
the other 50% or whatever is needed, making sure that I can get the building up to snuff or do the project that I need for 50% or less of what I'm asking for.
Hmm.
And obviously telling the donor that too, that,
Mhm.
as an investment in making sure I don't have to come back to them in 10 years and ask for this same thing, I'd like to split it with operations. And they've been very open to that.
Yeah.
And we can't understate how important that is to have money for operations, because there's no benefit if you give me $500,000 to build one building and you're not giving me any money to upkeep that building, or any money to help the operation continue. Yeah. Our board recently, we did a big future scenario workshop, which is part of the Camp Ahead podcast that I'm doing with Jess and KJ. And one of the things that we noted there was this idea of skills inventory. Where is our camp population with their who works where, who has what? And for donations, it's the same thing. To have that, your camper software and your donor software need to be able to somewhat talk together, or at least cross-reference each other, because you never know who you should ask. And for private camps, or any private camps listening to this, that skills inventory is like a fundraising for you, where you can't give a tax receipt or a benefit to them, where they might have a skill or something that your camp can use, and they're just alumni who believe in camp, or a parent who's amazed at the difference their child had at your camp. And so those are big things. I love the idea of not everything's a campaign. One of the things I have learned in the past 2 years is, sorry, did you have a question about that one, Travis?
Well, it's just I want to make sure we define things and not assume. So for me, campaign means this has a definite start and a definite end and a definite goal. And so by not having a campaign means that you might have a definite goal, but you don't have a specific, this is the thing we're fundraising for. We're not running a campaign. We are being, as Heather said, being intentional. And Joe's talking about the specifics of knowing your donors.
In my mind, I think of a campaign as like a capital campaign, which is actually a longer thing, right? Like a 3-year plan, or they can commit to giving us $50,000 a year for 3 years and pay that however they want. We have gotten into doing flash appeals. So an appeal is something happens, get it out there, and oftentimes the deadline is ASAP. So one of our fridges in our dining hall broke after 30 years, and it just died, and we need a new fridge. And I said to my brand new funding person, this is a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years ago, I said, well, let's just send it out. And there's a video that we watched that I got from the Nonprofit Storytelling Conference, and I have access to all those videos still. And we did up the email, and within an hour and a half, we had the appeal out to replace our fridge. And one of the things that I have learned, and I'm not sure if we talked about it because I haven't listened to Fundraising at Camp. One of the things we have learned is just ask for what you need. And the fridge was $5,000. And so we put on the form, like you could give $50 does this benefit, $100 does this, $250, $500. And then as we're finishing up, I was like, oh, just put the final amount, like just put it at the bottom, put $5,000, you bought us a new fridge. Yay, you,
Yep.
right? Like whatever the phrasing was. And I then remember that I went off to the Ontario Camps Association conference that I drove away after we released the appeal. And the next morning, somebody bought their fridge. Somebody came with $5,000 and they were floored. And what that teaches somebody who's new to fundraising in that aspect is, oh, we just need to ask. And those appeals are super helpful. You still, I think for the fridge, we actually raised somewhere closer to 12 or 13,000. But because I put the line in that it would help other work at camp, I'm not limiting it to only buying a really nice fridge.
Right. And I think that's such a good point that if you are a camp director because you love campers and stuff and all of the magic of camp, you get this thrust upon you. The reluctance that I hear from people to start to ask for things is incredibly strong for some people. And hopefully that is a lesson you take away from today, listeners, is just ask. You can get better at asking, you get more intentional at asking, but it has to start with a first time just saying, here's what we need. And can you help? And eventually it'll be, here's a very specific thing that we need to ask to a very specific person. But with a general ask, you just have to get started asking. There's lots of good communication stuff we can talk about, but
Well, and the worst they can say is no.
sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And even in a no, you learn something. Sometimes it's you ask for too much, you didn't ask for enough, or it's just not the right time.
Yeah.
But you're still maintaining that relationship. You're still putting a deposit into your relationship bank. And to Joe's point, one of my favorite quotes is from Winston Churchill, which is never let a good crisis go to waste.
Mm-hmm.
Joe probably could have found $5,000 in his operating budget somewhere to buy a new fridge. But because he put out the appeal, he ended up with 12.
12,
And smart about how he communicated with his donors about what he was going to do with the extra. That's really important too.
Yeah. And again, this year we did this. We had two emergency appeals, one for our tractor path, which needed $15,000 for erosion repair and French drains. And then in October or late September, we had our 80 gallon water tank break. We raised all the funds for both of those things through appeals, through asking. And what I would say to people is that ask, but also follow the formula and the simplest. So don't get bombarded by, Heather, I'm not sure how many fundraising companies' newsletters come into your email inbox, but the simplest one that I feel to follow is the Better Fundraising Company. They are the most easy to access because it's easy to understand. And they have these posters you could, like one-page posters you can print and put up around your computer to be like, great, ask, thank, report, repeat. Awesome. Just don't get bombarded by doing too much research. Ask and talk to people and just thank people a lot. Call them for no reason. Call them not to ask. Because as Heather's saying, all you're doing is putting more deposits in the relationship bank, so that when you potentially really need them, they can come through for you.
It's a real investment in communicating with people.
Yeah, for sure it is. For sure it is. And that's one of the reasons I'm contemplating, and Heather, you've taken that step. One of the reasons I'm contemplating taking the step that Heather has, which is I need to be the one saying every week I'm going to make 20 phone calls, not to ask for money. Some of them might be asked, but more so touching base, keeping people up to date, thanking them, and just because it's all important and connected towards the longevity. And Travis, right, people don't ask because they're afraid to talk about money, but
Yep.
money moves mission.
The mission.
You can't do this with no money.
And I think
I-
especially for those of us who are extroverted camp people who want everyone to like us, it can be really hard, especially when you've built this relationship, to not take a no personally
Mm,
and to think that they're saying no to you. They're not.
Mm.
They're saying no to the specific ask that you made. And that's a hard thing to learn, but once you do, it makes asking a lot easier.
If you're still building camp schedules and spreadsheets, you know how much time it eats up and how easily mistakes sneak in. Camptivities changes that with scheduling software that saves hours and ensures every camper gets the experience you promised. Whether it's group or camper scheduling, different schedules every day, or you just want to break your own rules to give a deserving camper a popular activity, Camptivities handles it all. With auto scheduling and over 70 easy-to-use reports, you'll reduce errors, keep staff happy, and run a smoother program. Be the change your camp needs. Start today at camptivities.com. Now's the time to find a better way to schedule this summer. Don't wait. Next summer will be here before you know it. We'd love to show you the next big thing in camp. Visit camptivities.com to set up a time to chat. Let us help you get away from your desk and back out to camp.
Exclusive for CampHacker listeners, grab Ultra Camp's free guide, The Parent Experience Checklist. Practical steps to simplify registration and keep families coming back. Download at ultracampmanagement.com/CampHacker. Parents don't want clunky processes, and you don't want constant phone calls. UltraCamp helps you simplify registration with mobile-friendly forms, offer payment plans that work for your families, reduce calls and emails with automated reminders, and keep parents engaged with built-in communication tools. UltraCamp helps you create smooth, stress-free parent interactions so your team can focus on camp, not customer service. Learn more at ultracampmanagement.com/CampHacker. I heard a great story today. Joe, you're talking about setting aside time regularly to make calls for donations, etc. And I don't have permission to share the story. I'd love to give credit to this camp consultant, but we didn't talk about me doing the show today. But one of the things that this camp consultant does for one of his clients is gets on Zoom with them for an hour and a half every Wednesday, and that person makes calls. He is just the body double. He's just the person that sort of hold them accountable to be. So there's space made every week to make calls, to do special thank yous, all of those things. And it is appointment giving, because having that extra body there, the accountability of doing it, means that you can't push it off because a toilet's leaking or.
And does he
some
also
parent's
get
mad.
feedback as he's making the calls? Like after a call, the
Yeah.
dude will give feedback?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Yep. So they work on the goals for whatever, the season is, and scripts and all that stuff. And then it's just there. But that means that organization has an hour and a half of fundraising from their executive director guaranteed every week.
And there used to be, and there probably still is online, there was a place where you could go and do that with some stranger. And it was proven that just having someone watch you work, or you're seeing them work, that you're more likely to do what you're supposed to. And so I could see that, Travis, in having two camp directors who want to set that hour and a half aside, and you're on a shared call and you're making those calls on your phone. I think that's just accountability in that sense, but that's great.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Heather, if you were starting this work from scratch with neither the skills nor the fundraising background of your camp, but you're like, okay, I gotta get there. I have to get myself ready to do this. We need to get started. What would be 2 or 3 things you would advise somebody?
Well, first, I would start talking to people. I would talk to everyone I could find who had any sort of relationship with camp and talk to them about what's important to them, where camp is in their story, and start digging up new names. Because when you think about your camp story, there are other people in it, right? Like I can tell you names of directors and counselors that I had that helped form my path to get here. And then you start almost like a murder board you see on a
Sure. Yeah.
detective show.
Yeah.
You
Red
start
string.
putting up names and making connections and that kind of thing. And then you walk around the site and you look for plaques and you look for more names and more information. You find out if there's a history book. If there's not a book, who's the historian? Who's the person that knows? Not only knows the people, but maybe knows where the skeletons are buried too. And then I would start by sending out a letter of introduction that says, hey, I'm brand new here. I would love to meet with you and get your story about why you love this camp. Go from there.
Yeah. And you said you should have conversation with people, but then the specifics of that I have questions for you. And so it's not just a, hi, Heather, awkward thing. It's like, I have questions I want to ask.
I'm brand new here. Tell me your story.
Yeah.
And if they don't take off, then, tell me, try to find out if they supported camp in the past.
Yeah.
Tell me why you choose to support camp. Are we in your top 3 favorite charities and why? If you could make one improvement to camp, what would it be? So have some questions ready, but you really are just trying to form that relationship under the banner of, hey, I'm brand new here. Tell me things.
Right. Yeah. That's great. Thank you. Joe, what would be your advice for getting started? No personal history of doing this work.
No personal history. I would recommend one of the first things would be to read The Fundraiser's Guide to Irresistible Communications by Jeff Brooks. It's a simple, like the Better Fundraising Co., it's a simple introduction to the work. And then I would, once again, talk to people, set aside time. If I was new and I was doing it as my only task, set aside very specific time blocks to do things during your time at work, right? So for this hour and a half, I'm going to call people. For this, I'm going to research. For this, because it's too easy, the same as all of our jobs, it's too easy to get caught up in the busy work of entering a database and updating things or responding to emails or any of those things. I think if I was new to fundraising, the same as Heather, if I was new to fundraising and knew what I knew now, I would go and interview alumni and previous donors. The American sites are full of named buildings, named furniture, named everything, which is very different than the Canadian side of this. But to get those names, to keep a Rolodex, which might be a term that some people listening to this podcast have no idea what it is. But Rolodex is like a database in paper, but like to keep detailed notes about who you're meeting. So a sales management, Salesforce has this, right? Like a contact management
customer
system.
Relationship management.
So you could do it in your Google Contacts, just be very with labels, with detailed notes in their notes file. And those things, if you're the type of person who loves wishing people happy birthdays, get people, put their birthdays in and send them a note every time, every year on their birthday. These are things that you want to appear personable, even if you're not personable. But if you're into fundraising, and we're talking about donor-centric fundraising, not grant writing. That's a separate thing.
Oh,
and
yeah, totally different
oftentimes,
skill.
but oftentimes the same person is on both of those. And grant writing is a lot about research and finding things. And if you're not someone who likes talking to people, you can spend a lot of time researching and writing your own things as a grant writer and forget that donors should be more than half of your tasks. Because that's where the money is going to come from, not from grants.
Right. Thank you. That's great. I was thinking about what my advice would be, and as always, I come at this from a
Travis. If you were new to this work, what would you do? What would you do?
Thank you, Joe. I would definitely use the new tools that are available in the world. I've been working on a tool. So this is not the character brand data fundraising. This is me personally. I've been working on a tool to make that communication and strategy stuff easier for camps. So there's stuff like that you just do it with AI that would save you a lot. The other thing I would say is put an app on your phone that'll do speech to text. And as you're driving away, just talk to your phone, make notes, or you're walking away from your conversation. Make sure that they go to the same place and then use AI to search them. Another thing I would do, and this is something I've started to do with sales calls, is I would record calls with permission that I could then say, based on research, here are the 10 or 15 best things that can happen in a call. Grade me on all of those things so that I know how to get better every time I do it. And I just built myself a custom GPT for sales calls. I just take the transcript, plug it in, or the MP3 and plug it in and ask for feedback. And that would be, from my perspective, that's some of the stuff I would start with.
All good things. I think the idea, I have a Google Pixel phone and the recorder app is phenomenal. Yeah. And then we take it out to a Google Doc and put it into either a notebook LM for Google in AI or, there's so many tools that make this job easier, but not easy.
Right.
And not
Absolutely.
to point out the obvious, but read your notes before the next meeting with that person and, mention their spouse's name, ask about their kids by name. Those are all, I know it sounds idiotic, but those are all really important things because it shows that you were listening.
And paying attention.
Even if you weren't, if you go back and read your notes.
Well, you invested time to look at the conversation. So, yeah. I think people will understand that that's an investment in them as well as the camp. Great. Thank you both. I really appreciate this. It's great to talk fundraising with the two of you again. What I want to do now is move us on to our tool of the week.
Tool of the week.
So if you're a former Fundraising at Camp listener and not a CampHacker listener, by way of explanation, the tool of the week is something that every one of us brings to help people be a better camp director. And Heather, I wonder if you could start off with your tool this time, please.
Sure. My tool is Giving USA, and with apologies to the two Canadians on the call, there are some Canadian equivalents, but this is a report published every year by the Lilly School of Philanthropy, and Giving USA is an organization, and it tells you all about the trends in fundraising, what's going great, what's falling off the wagon, what are some things you should be looking for. This is the 2022 version. I've since switched to the PDF version because I can do a lot more with it, including
We're grateful to you for bringing a prop.
Yeah, some of these graphics straight to my board, or in fact, straight to other funders to say, hey, here's a way that, some of our funders are really making an impact with their donor advised funds. Is that something you have that you might be interested in making Jamonville a beneficiary of?
Right. That's great. This is a reminder that if you go to camphacker.tv/podcast, you can look at the show notes and find the links to these things. We have also found the Canadian version from Canada Helps, and we'll post a link to that as well. Joe, what's your tool?
My tool is the Comet browser. So it's actually two tools. So Perplexity is an AI that you can use that is the difference is that you have access to all the other models. So I'm looking right now at my Perplexity and I'm seeing that Sonar is their model, but I have access to OpenAI's latest model, Anthropic's reasoning model, and their latest model, which is Claude, Google's Gemini, right? So you have access to all of these things. And so I've been a paid user of Perplexity, which is the same thing as ChatGPT. The difference being at the time is that it would give you sources for everything. So that was a really important thing. The Comet browser is Perplexity's web browser, which is built on Chromium, which means it's built on the same thing that Chrome is, that Microsoft Edge is. They're all built on the same bones. But if you're a pro user of Perplexity, it gives you an assistant built in. So just prior to this call, I've been tasked with giving my camp, I put a draft budget out to my board of directors, and they said, well, can you come back and give us one that shows a $10,000 profit? And so I did I did them side by side. And then I just asked the assistant, I said, hey, can you go into this Google Doc and highlight all of the cells that are different than in column B than in column A? And then it does it for me. It highlighted them. It's not as slow as I would be, but it's also not like instantaneous because it's thinking through those things. But that assistant can read emails and give you a draft response. It can summarize emails for you. Apparently it can buy things on Amazon if you ask it to, which means you don't have to go and look through all the ads and everything. But we, as Pierce Williams, we've recently purchased, there's a not-for-profit discount for Perplexity, which is that you pay $200 a seat for the year, or $20 a month, but you get what they call enterprise level, which means if your whole team is on it, you can then share your entire Google Drive on it, and Perplexity can work within that. I have not played with that enough, but we have 5 team members who are fascinated by how Perplexity works. And I've really spent the past couple of years, as you have, Travis, playing with AI and trying to figure out a way that it's best for camp. And Perplexity seems to be currently is my chosen point of attack as we go. And I'm about to import all of my ChatGPT history into Perplexity, and then I'll stop my subscription to ChatGPT because I have it right here.
That's great. Thank you for that. My tool of the week is a book called Adaptive Listening, not active listening, but adaptive listening, How to Cultivate Trust and Traction at Work by Lonbraun and Stevens, and have had it recommended in a couple of places, and which would be a good tool of the week for this crew. I don't have access to it. I got it from some weekly email that I get, and this person talked through it, and so that's what made me investigate it further, and gives people some more tools to teach their staff how to listen. I know that it's hard sometimes with teenage or young adult staff to get them to know how to talk, but I think how to listen as well is an important skill that we can help them develop. And this is a new framework on it that I think is really helpful and specific to what we do at camp. Thank you both for being here. Heather, if people have some follow-up questions, how can they get in touch?
They can email me at heather@jumonville, JUMONVILLE.org. Joe wants me to say, because there's no ville like Jumonville.
Yeah. I was waiting.
Well done. Thank you, Heather, for coming back on.
Thanks for having me.
If people want to reach out, they can reach out to my email is the best way to reach me, which is joe@campisbetter.com. JOE@campisbetter. Life is good. Camp is better. Yeah. And since we're here, I'm going to do a small plug we just finished hosting something we host here. We're going to host every year at Pierce Williams called Think Camp last week. We have next year's Think Camp dates already up. It will be November 24th to 27th next year. It's just camp people hanging out talking about camp. It's not a conference. It's a very casual hangout in late November with Joe and his crew at Pierce Williams. So feel free to come on it.
Ooh, I want to come.
Thinkcamp.ca. Come. It's
a really wonderful.
Yeah.
Model.
Travis was there. Travis is one of the crew that helped change something into Think Camp, and was attended the first one. And we love it.
Yeah. Good open conversations over a couple of days and a chance to see how other people do things. Thank you very much for sharing that. I appreciate it. Usually at this time, I highlight another Go Camp Pro podcast and I cycle through. The highlight is the Fundraising at Camp podcast. If you go back, there's some wonderful stuff from Joe and Heather that give you the good foundations to become a good camp fundraiser. And just search Fundraising at Camp. There aren't new episodes, but there is good stuff in there that I think is still worth going to. So please, in your podcast app, search for Fundraising at Camp. I want to thank the sponsors of this week's episode, as well as our editor, Ryan Vandertorn, and Go Camp Pro's executive producer of podcasting, Matt Wilfred, for all they do to help us get all these shows out to Camp Pros, trying to do better every week. And thanks for the evening, friends.
The Camp Hacker podcast is brought to you by Beth and Travis Allison, summer camp leadership training and marketing consultants. Thanks for listening. Camp Hacker, bringing your world into focus.